So when we, look at things for what they are, everything has a purpose, is what I tell our young people. And you have to ask questions to figure out that purpose. When you first go into the forest, what's one of the first things you hear? It's usually the crow or the raven. That's nature's alarm clocks, early warning system. They tell on you. They're squawking, squawking, squawking. They're telling the other creatures that you're coming in to their territory. How you come into that territory is determined by your actions and your movement. He thinks you're nuts.
Nice setup. It's like you planted that.
No, but, that's the way it is with nature. And, how you really conduct yourself, how you walk into that environment is watched and observed by others. Much the same as how you walk in society today, how you conduct yourself. Should be done in the same manner. And when we do things like this, respect is shown for everything and everybody. There are women's teachings, there are men's teachings. I cannot tell a woman, even though I know about certain teachings that they have. But that's not my place to tell them. But I can tell the man. Because women's teachings are women's teachings. It's like me trying to explain to a woman what it's like to give birth. That'll never, ever happen. No matter what I do. We have to have that. We wonder why our, young people are behaving the way they do is because they don't have them sacred teachings. For us to get them a Nintendo game or PS4 or PS6, PS10, whatever number they're at today, than it is to take time to explain to them, to talk to them, to share your time with them. How important is that? Put a price tag on it for me, will you? Somebody? Exactly. Just like the Montreal Canadiens. They're priceless right now.
No goalie.
No goalie. But we have to make that time. That's what I do, because people, have made that time for me. They say it takes a community to raise a child. Well, I'm a product of that community. I was fortunate to have had the elders that were there in my lifetime. Then I can look back on and call them real heroes. Because when I think about their stories, about what they did, what they've been through, and managed to keep their identity, to me, is pretty amazing, especially with all the obstacles that they have in front of them. Because when you look back in their time, they weren't allowed to assemble. It would be unlawful. They would be locked up. To play our ancient game of Waltz, the way it was supposed to be played. Because after the game was done, the bowl would be filled with water, and they were able to look into the future with that. To have that story today is pretty amazing. You look at it. The genocide that our people have endured, and physically, the fact that we're here today is pretty amazing. So when I look at our heroes, my heroes, I think back to Kewen. He was from Bear River, and I would see him making snowshoes in his backyard, in his little shack there. Nobody makes snowshoes today because you can go to Canadian Tire and buy them. But what was the story behind the snowshoe and its design? I look at Eddie Cabate, really, is his proper pronunciation of his name, Cabate. He's the man that I accredit of awakening our people here on the East. He brought the big drum here back in the 1940s. I hear people saying, well, such and such started in 1985, or this one brought it here in 1982. When I was a boy 50 years ago, in the 1960s, I remember seeing that old man in the front yard with his family having powwow. Nobody ever mentioned that. Well, I'm mentioning it now, because that's what I saw. That's what our community saw. People seen. I started dancing with that family when I was 11 years old, 10 years old. I remember one of the first times I danced for our people. We were laughed at, we were spit at, and made fun of for doing what we were. We persevered. Now everybody is doing it. All because that old man, one person, started drumming in Membertou 50-something years ago. I used to watch him, and I was marveled by his ability, because when I seen him making a canoe in his yard, and then take that canoe and go up and down the brook in it, it was pretty amazing to see. In 1967, there was an expedition that left Chapel Island to go to Expo. He was part of him and his son Peter and a number of other men from our communities. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 alive today out of that group. But that travel from here to there is an ancient route that we took. So when I talk to these young people, I talk about these kinds of stories, about how far our people traveled. Somebody asked me that a few weeks ago. And I said, we went as far as South America. This is pre-Columbian times I'm talking about. Prove it. No problem. 2 words. Daktalo and ganda ka nagwedjit. One is a lizard, daktalo, which is an alligator. And ganda ka nagwedjit is a monkey. Those are words in our language. Where did they come from? How do we know what to call them if we didn't see them? How do we know that they didn't exist? So that tells me we traveled that far.
And I might add, the Nahuatl people from Mexico City, they have a word for clouds. They call them tlaluk. Tlaluk.
Yeah.
Tlaluk. And in Mexico, in a very lush green valley where there's lots of food that grows there, they call it Michoacan. Michoacan Valley, or Michoacan.
Michoacan, yeah.
It's a place of food.
Place of food.
Anyway.
So when, I look at our history, and it got me into a lot of trouble when I was in law school. I had this one history professor, Mr. Johnson was his name. And almost every week, I would have to go to this class and endure what he was trying to express to other people. And each time, I would question it. So I used the word impeach with a small I. And impeach with a small I means question. This is my second language, by the way, English. I had no choice but to learn this one second. And it's one of the most backward languages on the planet. What I had problem with this individual was with his stand on us having migrated through the Bering Strait. And coming here, populating the Americas. And I ended up saying, well, you know what? From what I understand and from what I've learned in school so far, was that that's a hypothesis, right? And without even batting an eye, he says, yep. And I said the word hypothesis, from what I can understand about it and what I've read about it, is a scientific guess, right? Scholarly. Am I about right on that? Okay. Here's my hypothesis then. The reverse is we left the Americas and populated the rest of the world. That's pretty bold, eh? Now prove me wrong. The evidence is there that our people were around that region, or some other people were. What's to say the reverse wasn't true?
What makes them more right?
Exactly my point.